We've taken a deep dive into the discussions of the next 2 days, starting as of now, just a little while ago. So we do have something like, I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 at most, taking 5 minutes off your coffee break. And I suggest that people who want to sort of put forward an idea, ask a question, but very briefly, I'd appreciate if it's only a few minutes, raise their hand and take the floor. So, yes, please, Stephanie. Yes, yeah, please start. People can... Isn't it a microphone?
Thanks for all your talks. I found it very interesting to combine, maybe bring into conversation Elizabeth and Bastian's talk, because of this, you were saying actually that it's a deneoliberalization, maybe in the discourse yet. So I was wondering, with the facts that Elizabeth just brought, is this evidence you would that you would confirm, I mean, with what you've been researching on? That would be interesting to combine that a bit, because of the evidence Elizabeth showed on the industrial policies happening.
My name is Karen Helbæk Petersen. I'm from Denmark, and it's the first time I'm here. I was very interested, particularly in the first speech, but also the others, all very good. But mostly because I disagree with some of what you're saying in terms of the state is back. The state was always there. I mean, the state during neoliberalism at its high point, the state was sort of rolling certain functions, selling assets, etc., but always standing behind. And it was just a question of sort of, I would say, strategy, whatever, to support businesses. Then when it comes to a new phase of capitalism, polycrisis, etc., the need for new technologies, new strategic considerations, they are reversing the policies. They're supporting directly big businesses that, by the way, many of them are extremely powerful already. So it's not just that big businesses are, what should I say, now still being supported, they're being even more supported. I have some examples from my study about the Danish implementation of the RRF that are really glaring in that respect. So I think it's very important to stress that this is a breach of a particular rule, the paragraph 107 of the TFEU, that state subsidies are being given in such a way that is happening now. And I would like some of you to comment on that, because this is a very important point. Will there be a treaty renegotiation necessary, or will they go on with the hypocrisy of what they're doing now?
Roland.
Thanks a lot. Roland Kulke is my name, from Transform Europe, based in Brussels. I little bit take up also the issue of this role of the state, because we were told it's not academic but political impact, so to say. I'm very grateful to you that you all often mentioned the Draghi report, but we also have the Letter report and also the strategic agenda. And if you put these this trio, so to say, together, I'm really surprised what's happening right now with the EU. Because actually, I thought I would see a rebirth of the state, active policy. But before they even started, Letter and Draghi, basically, they know there's no real return, because that would mean debt, public debt. You can't do anything if you don't have money. And it's totally clear it won't happen with Germany and the Bundesverfassungsgericht. So what they are trying now is just what was mentioned with the capital markets union. I'm very grateful to Letter being so openly. He said what the IRA is to the United States will be our capital markets union. And in a different interview, he said, Capital Markets Union, what's it all about? It's about the pension money. So privatization of the workers' pension money. And that's it basically. So they use the state not to build up a state as such, but to squeeze the workers and then bring the money as investment. So it's really very, very interesting. And if you combine this, sorry, at least interesting for me. So, and if you combine this with a total 180-degree turn in competition policy, where they say basically now we are asking for merger and acquisition because we can't do anything. So we want to have a dog-eat-dog fight between European enterprises so that at the end, just a handful will survive and then they can struggle against China and United States. That basically coming down, merger and acquisition, no state, and then just squeezing the workers in favor of the then surviving big capital. So it's all around basically at the very end, that would be my argument, saving private property for the few. Thanks.
Mikey and Roland and Ronald and that's it, Ronald and Maria and please be brief.
Yeah, my name is Heikki Patomäki. I have a kind of a methodological question to Bastian, but it is also a question with very far-reaching ethical and political consequences as well. Namely, when you talk about social forces, I mean, do they have a given interest? I mean, if you name a particular social force, is the assumption that this comes with a particular interest? Or is it more that these interests are something that are being redefined all the time? They are like processual and also open to dialogue, and different circumstances, contexts are changing. I mean, you also indicated that that might be the case when you talked about the supply chains and their security and how the big corporations are interested in those kinds of things. So whether these interests are given or whether social forces are fluid in that sense, that they might be redefining their interests, and that might even be happening all the time.
For example, thank you. For example, the semiconductor industry is obviously a crucial military core sector, as the United States well knows. Secondly, to be following up on what Roland said, nobody mentioned the EU strategic agenda, which simply is extremely important for the next cycle of 5 years. And just one thing that I will mention is regulation. Regulation is to be reduced drastically. Similarly, in the Draghi report, exactly the same thing. And that is very much to do with the state, and it's the strongest instrument that the EU has for pushing policy in certain directions, particularly around climate, etc.
Just want to contribute with my impression after having read Letta's report and Draghi's report. And I would like Agnieszka to also to comment. What I saw that the social dimension is absolutely marginalized, or if spoken about, is about skills and nothing else. There are no social rights in either of these reports in a substantial way. Something about giving rights to be able to install, to get established in one country, etc., etc. So I think that the whole project is not only making it fragile. I mean, I think that inequalities are going to also widen all over Europe, and as you have shown, the inequalities within countries are stable or might be growing in this stagnation context. I think that we have to understand very well what are the social forces, as you said, the capital forces, and what the plan is globally. And I think that the militarization and the technology aspect is going, how this is going to evolve and what are the impacts on the workers in Europe. We have not studied it very well.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll try to at least answer some of the questions in the little time that is there. It's impossible to address all of them, do full justice to them, maybe. First of all, I mean, on the return of the state, I didn't say, maybe that was a misunderstanding, that I see it as a return of the state, but that's being said, it was the argument. But I besides made the argument, it's not a return of the state, but a changing role of the state. So the state has been essential in basically constructing the European neoliberal project. And as I said, capitalist markets always need the state in some form or another. And during neoliberalism, the role of the state was one of making markets, expanding the market logic, and devising the rules and institutions that help markets to be reproduced. But the state is very much there, though not maybe necessarily in such a visible way. So the role of the state has changed rather than that we've seen a return of the state. It looks like it from on a more superficial level, but if you do a sort of deeper analysis, you see that the state indeed was there, but the role is changing. It also has to do with militarization. I think that plays a huge role when it comes to US industrial policy in the competition with China. But we also see Europe responding to that in some ways by also talking about Europe's industrial defense base, and there are also now plans for that and strategies, etc. And we do see a kind of rise, if you like, even in embryonic, of a kind of European military industrial complex, also promoted, I think, by the EU. So that definitely also plays a role. With regard to Heike's methodological question, I think an important one, as I hinted at in my presentation, I think interests do change also of what I call the European capitalist class. And so maybe rather than saying that this social force is no longer powerful or hegemonic or whatever, part of the reasons why we see policy changes, also changes of the policies that these people advocate, because ultimately about people who then form a kind of collective actor, is that their interests are changing. At the same time, I would say that some of the interests are not changing. The interests are changing because the context is changing, and it's a process, a processual thing, as you say. But what is not changing is arguably sort of their core class interests, which is to protect private property and the freedom of capital. And there I agree with you that is what we're still observing. And then maybe finally also to maybe comment upon the other papers, as was also asked, to what extent do I see sort of neoliberalization or the end of neoliberalism, what you were presenting? So, I mean, I think with regard to what Elizabeth was also saying, with the capital markets union, this also relates, I think, to your remarks. What we are seeing, it's definitely not the complete end of neoliberalism. So we do see a shift to what I would call a post-neoliberal market directing role of the state. But many of the neoliberal elements are definitely still in place. So Draghi at the same time also advanced the capital markets union and basically the privatization of workers' income through debt. So I mean, this is also taking place at the same time. So in a way, you know, we are still in a kind of hybrid situation. With regard to the social pillar, I think, and yes, that's right, that things have changed in a positive sense in recent years, but it is very fragile and also uneven. So in my schedule, I would say this is more a market correcting rather than a market directing role of the state. But I think that market correcting role at the EU level is still really limited. Thank you.
I just want to add two things. The one is, for me, it goes very well together. those two views on neoliberal and the post-liberal or post-neoliberal version. To me, it's just the idea that given a different time frame and given the polycrisis that we are in or have been in or still in, means that we are in a different situation. So as the historic setting has changed, also the shape of the neoliberal world has changed. So it's good to give it also a new name to grasp what is now going on. And to me, that more or less means that the first step for me is that there is a stronger view again on the banking sector, on less prudential regulation, stronger capital markets. But again, that means it's not a strong state in the sense what was requested before. It's maybe a larger volume somehow. There were new financial means coming up, but it doesn't mean that it's guided through a strong institutional setup that means to support the citizens or to support what they were supposed to do given a specific welfare state. So that was in my back always is that there is a welfare state setting somehow, and that seems to be what eroded with this new sense of strong oligopolistic companies in the end that are stronger to compete in international markets.
Thank you. So very briefly, very good points. And it's perhaps surprising how ephemeral or fleeting this social turn proved to be. So with more favorable economic conditions, it was a bit of a window dressing and temporary and suspension type of social turn. Whereas we see it with all the still, I mean, it's a new commission, but there is continuity, of course. We see already such radical shift and the return of competitiveness. There is the window dressing sustainable competitiveness, but it's very much sustaining skills and workforce that can produce more or contribute economically. It's not really paying attention to inequalities and precariousness that persist, which might be surprising given that the fear was that more unfavorable living and working conditions produce discontent, and discontent with mainstream economics and politics. And based on that, the support for anti-system parties grows. And yet we see after the elections, European elections and many other elections unfolding across Europe at national level, we see that turn in voting, and still the policies pursued after the turn in voting are pushing more on the worker side. No? So not providing much more of the safety nets, but very much return to the competitiveness and the previous mindset. So it just seems that the endurance of the economic model or premise, and indeed the social turn perhaps being too fleeting, too fragile. Indeed, it's without any solid basis.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all the speakers, all of you. We'll stop now because we're already running late. The next plenary starts at 5. I suppose 5 past 5 might be okay. So let's go to coffee.